Before you give up, remember this. Nobody quits because the goal was impossible. They quit because they forgot the reason they started. Think about that. Not the difficulty, not the odds, not the timeline, the reason. Every goal begins the same way. There is a moment where you decided. Maybe it was a bad morning. Maybe it was watching someone else live the life you kept postponing. Maybe it was a quiet decision made alone. Whatever it was strong enough to move you, strong enough to make you start. In that first stretch, you did not need discipline. You did not need anyone to remind you why you were doing this. The reason was loud. It was fresh. It carried you. That is what people call motivation. Motivation is real. But motivation was never built to last. Motivation is a spark, not a fire. It gets you off the ground. It does not keep you in the air. Here is what nobody tells you before you start anything worth finishing. The excitement always fades, always. Not sometimes, not if you are unlucky, always. The version of the goal that felt thrilling in week 1 will feel ordinary by week 6. By month 3, it may not feel like anything at all. That is not a sign that something went wrong. That is simply what happens to every emotion that is not renewed. When the excitement disappears, most people make the same mistake. They think the fading feeling is information. They think, if this still mattered, I would still feel it, because the feeling is gone. But the feeling and the reason are not the same thing. The reason does not disappear. It gets buried. This is the actual gap between the people who stop and the people who continue. It is not talent. It is not luck. It is not even discipline. Not really. It is whether your reason was strong enough to survive the season where the feeling left and the difficulty stayed. That season comes for everyone. There is no version of a meaningful goal that skips it. If you are building something, that season looks like weeks of work with nothing visible to show for it. In that season, motivation is already gone. What is left, if anything is left at all, is the reason. So here is a question worth asking honestly. Why did you actually start? Not the version you tell other people, not the polished answer that sounds impressive. The real one, the one that made you uncomfortable enough to act, the one you have not said out loud in a while. Most people never lose their goal. They lose their access to the reason behind it. The goal is still sitting there, technically unchanged, but the thread connecting them to why it mattered has quietly frayed, one distracted week at a time, until pulling on it does not do anything anymore. This is why willpower keeps failing people. Willpower is trying to force your way through resistance, using nothing but effort. It works for a while. It is exhausting to sustain. A reason does not fight the difficulty. A reason reframes it. A reason turns, I have to do this again, into, I remember why this matters. Those two sentences produce completely different behavior, even when the task in front of you is identical. Think about the difference between someone pushing through on willpower and someone pushing through on a reason strong enough to survive. The willpower version is gritting their teeth, counting down, waiting for it to be over. The reason version is tired too, just as tired, but they are not negotiating with themselves about whether to continue. The question was already settled long ago. What remains is simply the doing. That settled feeling is not confidence. It is not certainty that things will work out. It is knowing that even if this attempt fails, the reason behind it will still be true tomorrow and the day after. Now here is where people get it wrong. They think remembering the reason means reliving the original excitement. It does not. You will likely never feel exactly what you felt in week 1 again. Chasing that feeling is its own trap. The reason is not supposed to feel like a spark forever. It is supposed to feel like ground under your feet, something you stand on, not something you chase. When the struggle begins, the goal is not to manufacture motivation you do not have. The goal is to return deliberately to the reason you already have, even when it is quiet, even when it does not feel like much in the moment. Ask yourself what that reason actually costs you if you let it go. Not the goal, the reason underneath it. If the goal was the business, what does giving up actually mean? for the life you were building toward. If the goal was becoming a different version of yourself, what does giving up actually mean for the person you have to look at in the mirror tomorrow and every day after that? That question is not meant to guilt you. It is meant to reconnect you. Guilt fades just as fast as excitement does. Clarity does not. Difficult seasons are not random punishment. They are the exact place where reasons get tested and revealed. Anyone can want something when it is easy. Anyone can stay committed when the results are visible and the effort feels rewarded. The season where nothing feels rewarded is the only place that actually tells you whether your reason was real or borrowed. Someone starts training because a doctor said a hard word in a small room. Someone starts saving because they are tired of feeling one emergency away from disaster. None of these reasons are loud forever. All of them are strong enough, if remembered, to outlast the season where the excitement runs out. Watch how the same pattern repeats across completely different lives. In a career, the reason might be the version of yourself who no longer dreads Monday morning. In a relationship, the reason might be the kind of partnership you promised yourself you would build. Different lives, different goals. The exact same mechanism underneath every single one. In every case, the difficulty was never the deciding factor. It never is. The deciding factor is always the same quiet question, asked in a low moment, answered honestly or dishonestly. Is the reason still true? Everything else is just decoration built around that one answer. This is why comparing your reason to someone else's does not work. Their reason carried them through their season. It was built for their life, their history, their specific reasons for starting. Yours has to be built for yours. Borrowed motivation runs out fast. You cannot borrow someone else's reason and expect it to survive your worst weeks. It was never yours to begin with. Costumes come off the moment things get uncomfortable. There is a difference worth naming clearly. An owned reason and a borrowed reason can look identical from the outside. Both can be written down and spoken with conviction on day one. The difference only reveals itself later, deep in the season where nobody is watching and nothing feels rewarded. A borrowed reason asks, would this still matter if no one ever found out? An owned reason answers without hesitation. Before you give up, do not ask whether this is hard. Difficulty was never proof that you chose wrong. Ask whether the reason you started with is still true, not whether it still feels exciting, whether it is still true. If it is still true, then the difficulty you are in right now is not evidence that you should stop. It is simply the part of the process that separates people who meant it from people who were only ever chasing a feeling. If you have to search for that reason, if it has been buried under exhaustion and noise for so long that you cannot immediately find it, that is not failure. That is just maintenance you have been skipping. Reasons need to be revisited on purpose, not once at the beginning and then never again, regularly, quietly, especially in the seasons where you need them most and feel them least. You do not check your reason once and assume it will hold forever, the same way you do not eat once and assume you will never be hungry again. It requires return visits, not grand ones, just honest ones, often, especially on the days it feels least convenient to look. Before you make the decision to stop, write down, in your own words, the exact reason you started without editing it to sound impressive. Read it back and notice whether it still lands. If it still lands, you are not facing a reason problem. You are facing a difficulty problem. Difficulty was never a valid reason to quit on something that still matters. If it does not land anymore, that is useful information too. It means the goal itself may need to change. Not because you failed, because the reason underneath it already did. Learn to tell the difference between the two signals. A fading feeling sounds like, I do not want to do this today. A fading reason sounds like, I no longer see the point of this, even on my best days. phases. The first one is normal, expected, and survivable. The second one deserves real attention. Most people never separate these two signals. They hear either one and reach for the same conclusion. That is exactly how a fading feeling gets mistaken for permission to give up on something that still deserved to be finished. Notice how differently the same obstacle feels, depending on which one is true. The exact same hard week, the exact same silence where progress should be, lands completely differently depending on whether your reason is still standing underneath it. With a reason intact, the obstacle is simply the next thing to get through. Without one, the same obstacle becomes proof that maybe this was never meant to work. It was never about the obstacle. It was always about what was underneath you when the obstacle showed up. You are not supposed to feel motivated the entire way through anything worth finishing. You are supposed to feel tired and continue anyway, because the reason underneath the tiredness has not changed. That is not the absence of struggle. That is what surviving the struggle actually looks like from the inside. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just quietly true, day after day, whether anyone is watching or not. Picture the version of you a year from now who kept going, not because every day felt inspired, because on the days it did not, the reason was still enough to take one more step. That version of you is not built from big, loud comebacks. It is built from 100 small returns to the same quiet truth, repeated on the exact days it would have been easiest to walk away. Picture the other version too, the one who let the feeling decide everything, the one who mistook the fading of excitement for the fading of meaning, the one who walked away right before the season would have turned. That version is not weak. That version simply never learned to separate what they felt from what was actually true. The goal did not become impossible. The reason just went quiet. Both versions of you are still possible right now, at this exact moment, before you have decided anything. The only difference between them is whether the next decision gets made from exhaustion or from the reason underneath the exhaustion. Exhaustion is loud. It always is in hard seasons, but loud has never meant true. The reason does not need to shout to still be standing exactly where you left it. None of this happens all at once. People expect remembering their reason to feel like a single dramatic turning point. It rarely works that way. It is choosing on one specific tired evening to open the laptop instead of closing it. It is choosing on one specific quiet morning to show up to the thing you almost skipped. None of those single choices feel significant in the moment. Stack enough of them together and they become the entire difference between the people who quit in month 4 and the people who are still standing in year 4. Not because year 4 felt easier, because they kept making that same small choice long after it stopped feeling exciting to make it. Watching for the reason to return in one triumphant moment is the wrong thing to wait for. It does not arrive that way. It shows up in fragments in the middle of ordinary days, often when you least expect it. Your job is not to wait for the fragment to arrive on its own. Your job is to go looking for it deliberately, especially on the days it would be easiest to assume it is gone for good. Before you give up on whatever it is you are close to walking away from right now, go back, not to the plan, not to the strategy. Go back to the reason. Sit with it honestly. Ask if it is still true. If it is, let that be enough to take the next step. Even a small one, even an imperfect one, even one you do not feel like taking. The goal was never the fragile part. The feeling was always the fragile part. The people who make it to the other side of hard seasons are not the ones who felt the most. They are the ones who remembered the most at the exact moment it would have been easiest to forget. Remember why you started, not as a slogan, as the actual reason you are still here doing this. On the day it would be easiest to stop, you do not need to feel inspired to remember it. You only need to be honest enough to ask the question, and still enough for one quiet moment to hear the answer underneath the exhaustion. Before you close this, ask it plainly. Why did you start? Not the polished version, not the version built for other people, the real one. The one that made you uncomfortable enough to begin in the first place. If the answer is still true, then nothing that has happened since changes what needs to happen next. The struggle is not proof that you chose wrong. It is simply the part of the story that was always going to come. Every person who finished something worth finishing walked through this exact season, tired, unimpressed with their own progress, wondering quietly whether it was still worth it. The ones who continued were not the ones who stopped feeling that way. They were the ones who kept answering the question honestly, again and again, until the answer carried them further than the feeling ever could have. That reason was strong enough to move you once. It is still there. It is still enough. If you let it carry you one more day than you planned on giving up,